Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sound of the Loons podcast presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. This time, I'm letting Adrian Heath off the hook this week. Instead, I get really the brains of the operation and assistant coach Ian Fuller. Now, I'm sure Adrian doesn't listen to this, so he won't know that I just said that, and hopefully his office isn't too close to where you're standing right now. But yeah, Ian, thank you so much for joining me. I know we haven't gotten to see each other in person for quite some time and not out at training every day, but I enjoy seeing you on Zoom here and catching up on the first game.
Yeah, really nice to see you again. It's been probably 4 months through the long winter season in Minnesota since we've seen you, and hopefully get to see you out at training soon.
Yeah, I know. Somebody else asked me that one day, and I'm like, well, why? Like, why would I be out there? Like, I don't need to be out there. I mean, I really enjoyed coming to training every day when I was working for the club and having to know like all the ins and outs, but it's so different, you know, covering it from this perspective, but at least doing the podcast, I still feel like I get to stay connected to what you guys have going on and having all the different guests and stuff. So what was preseason from your vantage point, aside from long? At least you were in 2 warm climates, so I don't want to hear any complaints. But what was your preseason like for you? What was your vantage point of it?
Yeah, it was, we had 7 weeks compared to 6 weeks. So we had an extra week this last preseason. We did some really good work, some hard work. And I think the guys, you have to give them a lot of credit. They put in so much work this offseason. A lot of them came in fit. So as much fitness as we did, the guys had a really good baseline. We got some really good work done in Florida. I think with the group we've got this year, we had to have an understanding that we need everyone working and being on the same page, and give the guys credit from day one. They have been giving everything they've got. They've been working their tails off for each other. And it's more the collective this year than it probably has ever been with the club. And we all know that. And you kind of saw that going into week 1 against Dallas. We've had some concerns during preseason. We haven't scored as many goals as we'd have liked. We haven't created enough opportunities to win on a regular basis in this league. But we know that we have to be extremely defensively sound and everyone rowing in the right direction. And then, out in Palm Springs, again, another lovely place to go. But the guys, again, put in a lot of hard work. We got a decent result and 2 poor results, but we knew that it's not always result based in preseason. It's getting some of the work we had to get in. But again, we were missing some guys, even going into the last few preseason games because of green card meetings. And so it was difficult to get some of the shape work done. But I thought our shape was really, really good against Dallas, and that showed with all the work we've done in preseason.
So when you look at going into opening day, clearly it's not, maybe not ideal, because you just said you had some pieces missing towards the end of preseason. Even if you're just trying to get some tactical work done, you're trying to get that rhythm, trying to get that chemistry, that cohesiveness, even with the guys that are returning. But you also have guys that are coming back now that hoping for a breakout year. When Mender Garcia came partway through last season, second season for Bangagukle Hlongwane. You've got Kervin Arriaga with his second year now ahead of him, and he missed some time last year with a high ankle sprain. So how much did you feel like with the group that you did have there and available, there's just sort of a light bulb that has gone on, a comfort level with them returning, being, in Minnesota now for the second time, knowing what they kind of have in front of them?
Yeah, I think that the one thing about not bringing a lot of guys in during the off season is that you've got a lot of continuity amongst the group. A lot of the guys have known our system for years, if not just a year. Menders are one of the rare cases you bring in mid-season. And you can tell it takes some time to get used to this league. A top player in Robin Lod came right after his season in Europe and came into this league and didn't particularly perform how he would have liked to, just because he's not had gone through a preseason. He'd not gone through all the little team building stuff that you like to have within a group. So it's not always easy to come in mid-season. And even some of the guys we brought in this off season, Mickey Topias is a pro, has been a pro for many years. So a lot of them had fit into our system really, really nicely. And again, we're looking at the collective this year, and a lot of these guys are selfless individuals and selfless players, and for the common good. And that's exactly what we're going to need this year.
What about bringing in, though, some league veterans and like Zarek Valentin? He gets to start it right back against Dallas, somebody who's just been around the league, knows how to, he's a pro's pro, leadership qualities. What does that mean when you bring in a player like that you just kind of know what you're going to get, and that you can feel good about bringing in some veterans just to kind of slot right in? And even if they're not on the pitch, they're so helpful off the pitch and at training sessions.
Yeah, invaluable. I mean, I was speaking with Z, I think last week, called him assistant coach, Zarek Valentin, because he's so vocal. He knows the league inside and out. He's won championships in this league. He is the perfect individual to have maybe with a younger guy in front of him. When Bongi plays that side, you've also got a new center back coming into the league, and he can help with that. His Spanish speaking has been invaluable. So Z has been perfect for what we've needed this year. He can play both sides, but vocally he's just been fantastic. He's been great for the young guys as well to get used to the league.
You've talked about selflessness and sort of the unselfish nature of this group, showing up, being willing to do the work, working as a cohesive unit. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that there's still an absence of Emmanuel Reynoso, but you have the quality in the player like a Robin Lod, who can slide right in, play anywhere at any time. He's played the 10, he's played the 9, he's played the 8. I mean, really, and we're not even talking about when he's on the wing. So how important was that in this time of absence of Reynoso to be able to have a player like that with that kind of quality and that sort of work rate that you can put in that role, at least for now?
I joke with Rob all the time. I said, give me 10 clones of Robin Lod, and I think I could win the league with him, because he just understands every role. He just gets it. He's so smart. He's so good with the ball, but usefulness as well. The funny thing is he probably played one of his worst games for us against Dallas, but just his defensive shape and understanding is so helpful for a young guy like Garcia. To play next to him, which in such an important role to take away the 6 of Dallas and make them go around us rather than through us. But yeah, Rob he's a special character. He is the coach's best friend, because he gives you at least aggravation with 100% output and 100% effort. He's just he's fantastic to be around, and I think the guys love him because of it.
Yeah, I remember at training every day, we'd usually be standing out kind of by the coolers in the water before sometimes you guys would trickle out. And he's always just sitting on the cooler until he's got to get on the pitch. And that's not because he's being lazy. It's almost like he's just conserving his energy. He knows what he needs to do to be ready for a game, because he's been there, done that, kind of just goes about his business. But yeah, just sort of like that sly smile, goes about his business, gets the work done, will do whatever's asked. And what I really appreciated about him last season when he was playing more in that holding mid role, or almost like a double pivot or an 8, is I think people might have been pleasantly surprised about his feistiness, his physical nature, his bite to him, because normally when he was on the wing or whatever, you don't see that. You don't pick him as a guy that's like going to get in a fight or something,
No, the moment he crosses the line, he changes, because he does have that bit of bite to him. Every morning I see him, I ask, Rob, how you doing? And he just looks at me and shrugs his shoulders. He's like, I'm okay. And that's all you really want to hear from him, because if he says he's bad, then you worry. If he says he's good, then you really worry. But the moment he crosses that white line, he's a battler, and I wouldn't change him for any other player in the league, week in and week out.
We needed to interview his wife. That's what it is. Well, you know what I mean? I feel like, what if I remember the only time I got some emotion out of him one time was I was asking about him, because I think Boxall went out to dinner or went somewhere with his wife for, his birthday or something. And so Robin was watching their 2 kids, and he was like, oh, come on. Like, it gets to a point, like it's 10 o'clock, like, what are you doing? It's like the only time I ever heard him say like some kind of, funny, and, because him and Boxall have a pretty good relationship. Yeah,
they're very close. They have this very similar demeanor, and a quick way to get a smile is ask them about their families, and they'll instantly smile. Other than that, it's very just matter of fact.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about this FC Dallas game. And you and I, before we started recording, we're talking about it. You can go down the stat sheet. I can look up the stats and say, what category. But at the end of the day, the only category that matters is you got a goal. They didn't. You held them to a shutout, which was big for your back line and, of course, for Dane St. Clair, but also the finish from Mender Garcia and just finding a way to get a result on the road against a Dallas team that is essentially identical to the way they ended last season.
Yeah, I think if you look at even the last two matches we played, actually back to back because of the playoffs last year, we gave away one goal in two matches to Dallas at Dallas, and it was a set piece goal, and I take responsibility for that. That's my fault. But my point is that we've held a very, very good team to one goal and in 180 minutes. It's a testament to our strong defensive shape, our discipline. What we find very important on the road is to keep clean sheets. From Dane all the way to the number 9 in Mender, I thought all 11 guys worked for the common good, and that's exactly what you're going to need against a talented veteran team in Dallas. We have been lucky the last 2 years not to have gone down there in 110-degree heat, where it's a little bit more difficult on us Northerners up here, but it worked out very well that we frustrated them. We had more than just the one opportunity, and I think that shows that we can create more opportunities. We weren't clinical enough on the break, but I thought behind the ball, I thought we were extraordinary.
When you look at that and you talk about opportunities created, chances created, dangerous, quality chances created. And I'm looking at the stat sheet because I haven't rewatched 90 minutes of the match yet. But when I see 9 corners to 0 corners, was that like a thought? Like, where do you guys need to be more dangerous to get to the end line to be effective? Or because you have space, you have speed, you got Frega who likes to cut in, but you've got Bongi who can get to the end line or cut in. Is any of those things even a thought, or is that what just not even factored into the game?
Yeah,
of course, you're defending 9 corners.
Of course, if you use that ratio and that formula every match, you're probably not going to be on the winning end every weekend. But I'm not so concerned with that. I'm looking at some of the chances we created comparatively to them in a high stress place to play. I look at situations like Mender's on the break. Bongi had a chance or two. Are we getting in the areas we would like to in controlled manners to create more opportunities? No, we know that. That's been a focus all off season and into preseason, is that we have to be better in the ball in the final third. When to go, when to maybe hold it up and maybe create some opportunities through a bit more possession. But I think those 9-0 corners, and then some of the shots versus shots on goal, I think they had one compared to our one. There's many ways to skin a cat, and luckily we skinned the cat the right way on Saturday.
Well, and I think soccer is probably one of the sports that's most telling in that sense, that the stat sheet can rarely tell the story of how the game actually unfolds, and it's probably one of the only sports on the planet where you can have 90% of this possession and the better of the stats and come away with a loss, or vice versa. So I think that's what's always challenging. And, people can't get too hung up on that, because unless you've watched the game front to back to front to really know how chances were created. We just talked about players that are in their second season, new signings. Does it feel like getting Hassani Dotson back is a real boost to this group coming off that ACL injury? It's almost like getting a new player, because you're getting them back in, and a player that can play multiple positions.
Massive. Arguably Hassani has been one of our most influential and steady players when he's fit in the last 2 or 3 years. He just drives a winning attitude of the team. He's strong. His ability is fantastic. He's just got a great mentality. And we missed him last year. There's no question about it. Just to have him in and around the group this preseason has been great. Even some of the fitness stuff, him driving the guys, him pushing people. He may not be the most vocal guy, but just his demeanor is a plus for us. and then you get him back on the field in terms of quality. And he's still working through some of the cobwebs that a year off have, and there'll be some ebbs and flows for him for sure. He'll spike and then he'll valley, and he'll just the steady incline is what we're looking for Asani. And it was a good first step for him to get 25, 30 minutes under his belt to push on for the next week against Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that you guys already have a bye week, which, I understand the nature of the schedule, the nature of the beast. Does it feel like this came at a weird time for you? Would you rather have had it later? Does it just not really matter and you just deal with it? I mean, how do you guys look at it already just being the second week of the season?
Yeah, it is what it is, Kendra. And I mean, ideally it would be after 10 to 15 weeks, but having picked up 3 points against Dallas was massive because, you step on the field against Red Bull at 7:30 Central Time, and then a West Coast team could have been playing on the East Coast and already had 9 points by the time you kick off, and you're at 0 after 3 matches, two matches out for us. So yeah, it is. It's a plus that we got the 3 points, and maybe it's a little bit of a shake-up burden that we have a bye right now, but it is what it is. Everyone's got to do it. We got on with it. If anything, get, Maria back from Paraguay after his green card meetings, and get some guys maybe healthy that have a few nicks here and there. But it is what it is when we get on with it. And thankfully, we have an extra week to prepare for Red Bull, which is a very difficult team to play against. We all know how they play, and it's a difficult team to prepare for. So we've got an extra week for that.
When you look at the roster, and yes, you have a week off in the second week, but this season is going to be a beast in the sense that you've got Leagues Cup, you've got all these competitions thrown in there. So depth and quality of roster is going to be incredibly important down the stretch. When you look at where this roster sits right now and the pieces that you've added, we didn't even mention Daniil Henry coming also back in as a center back and a veteran of this league. But when you look at the quality of this roster, where do you think the strength of it is? Where do you think there's maybe still a little bit of a need? Zarek in the right back role, you've got DJ Taylor. DJ can play on the left, but it's Kamar Lawrence for the most part. So where do you think this roster is just going to hold up for the bulk of the season?
Yeah, I think that the continuity of the group from last year, with those added pieces that you had mentioned, I think that's going to be the strength of the group. Clearly we're missing a valuable piece, but we're going to concentrate on the guys that are here and concentrate the strengths of the team. And the strengths of the team right now are the guys are bought in. Guys understand their roles. They work for each other, and they want to fight through games to get results. And sometimes in this league that works. You have to have talent as well, and we do. We have pieces of talent that are game changers. But I would say the most important thing for us right now, moving forward in this early part of the season, is just that fight and that grit that we've got all together.
When you look at Red Bulls, how and when do you guys really turn the page to prepare for them and focus on them versus on you and what you guys did or didn't do in game one against Dallas?
Yeah, I think with the extra week, we'll spend this week working on some of the stuff that we, didn't do so well and that we can work on the weekend, getting guys healthy. We gave the guys a few days off to, the preseason was a long time away from their families. So it's good for them maybe to get away for a few days, get their heads right, be with their families. And then we'll get going for Red Bull. Again, it's a very difficult team to prepare for. It's significantly different than what we faced in Dallas. And also at home, we want to be effective and we want to play attacking, football. So it's going to be a challenge for us. But, I thought they were very good against Orlando and didn't get the result they deserved down in Orlando. But we'll be turning the page. We already have as a staff, and we'll be turning the page for the guys this week and getting them focused on Red Bull next week.
And not that it matters, but I'm looking at the forecast here. I know we've got some snow out there right now. It seems like it's melting a little bit. This week looks fantastic for the rest of the week, but getting that field ready for March 11th, which we know and not even, I think you guys are supposed to have an open training session this weekend at Allianz Field. We'll see if that happens so the fan base can come out. But when you talk about home field advantage, I know it's the Red Bulls, But do you guys think about that at all? I know that there's going to be 20,000 strong at Allianz Field opening day, regardless of the temperatures and the climate. But how much are you guys looking forward to being at Allianz Field on March 11th?
Yeah, I think I threw the whole weather stuff out when we had Atlanta
February 2nd. Oh,
in the snow game, our first year in the MLS. I threw that out the door when a bunch of South Americans beat us. The Nordic team we had, they smoked us. I think it was 6-2 that day, or I don't recall. So I've thrown the weather out the window, but the one thing I am excited about are getting in front of the fans. I think that, they had a little bit of a taste watching on television, but to have them see us see them, I think we've got a great advantage here at Allianz. And I think the support of the fans is one of the, if not the driving factor over the last few years for us to make the playoffs, is that we've created a really good environment at home, and they've created a substantial amount of support for the guys to push through tough times. And again, we're going to try to make it one of the most difficult places to play against. I think last year we gave away too many points at home. So I think this is the first step in trying to create that atmosphere again this year.
Yeah. I mean, Allianz Field is second to none in as far as atmospheres go. And, we've been at just about all of them around the league here. So I think it's one of those things that the Minnesotans and the fans should be incredibly proud of. And when we would travel at other stadiums, people would always say, if there's a traveling supporter or a traveling fan that's like, where do I need to get to? It was almost always on the bucket list of, I need to get to Allianz Field, even other broadcasters. So we know what this place can bring. And I know it'll be no different on March 11th. I don't know if you were at the stadium on February 2nd during the men's qualifier against Honduras, a year plus ago, but that was much colder conditions, and the fans turned out. There was no hesitation. So March 11th will be balmy.
We had an easy excuse to miss that because we were in preseason down in Florida last year, so we didn't make it out to the match. But we saw some of the fans. Some of them were shirtless and, I mean, just nuts. But Minnesotans are built differently. There's no question.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Ian. I know I said the same thing to Cameron Knowles when he joined me, and we'll be catching up with him in the next segment. But I know you guys have an insane schedule. I know it's a bye week for you, but nonetheless, you guys have a lot going on. Locking it down here and getting ready for March 11th. So I appreciate you taking the time.
No worries, Kendra. Thank you. It's good to see you. Go Loons.
Yep, sounds good. And hey, everybody, stick around. Cameron Knowles, head coach of MNUFC 2, coming up in segment number 2. When injury takes you out of the game, it's time for your team to step up. At Allina Health Orthopedics, you'll get expert care backed by a whole health system of providers. With records, test results, and care team, you are always close to the care you need. Schedule now at allinahealth.org/ortho. All right, welcome back, everybody. Segment number 2 of this Sound of the Loons podcast presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. And now we get to be joined by Cameron Knowles, the head coach of MNUFC 2, soccer extraordinaire with a long history of success just about every single place that he's been. So thank you, Cam, for joining me. I know you have an incredibly busy schedule. We were just sort of chatting about it before we started recording, but I appreciate you taking the time because it's about time that we get an update on what the Twos have going on.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to be here. We've got more than enough time.
Yeah. Well, the background behind you is a little bit gray, which is a little bit what like the dome looks like when you guys are in it for this extended period of time. The sun is shining today. I hear like things dripping and melting outside. So I kind of feel like that's a good sign that, maybe out on grass soon enough. And just give us a little lowdown on what the preseason is like for you guys, because we focus so much on the first team and the Twos that have been with the ones. What's it like for you guys? What is the schedule like since yours is a little bit longer than the first team?
Yeah, I mean, in total, it ends up being a little bit longer because we brought all our signed players we brought in with the same report date as the first team, so that if there happened to be an opportunity for them to go with the first team, whether it was even just the first week here, the first trip to Florida, the second one to California, we wanted guys to be available, and so we're fortunate that a number of our guys, 6-7 guys, were able to participate with the first team, and then we started, in earnest, probably 3 or 4 weeks after that. And we had a large group of trialists. We had, a decent group of academy players, some that we hadn't seen a lot of last year that were, relatively new to us, some that we'd seen a little bit last year, but we want to see more of this year. And then adding in our guys as they come back, from being with the first team in Florida or, being with the first team in California. So our numbers have sort of ebbed and flowed a little bit throughout the preseason, but it's been good. I mean, the first 2 weeks we're basically focusing on and being able to give a lot of time and attention to guys that were in on trial, guys that we brought in from our open combine. And so it was good to have that, single-minded focus on those guys for a couple of weeks, and then to slowly build in and just be intentional about how we do things through the preseason leading up to now. We're a month out from the next game.
When you look at and take some time to reflect on 2022, what is that process like for you as a head coach? Because I know you are driven to have a certain level of success, and success in year one may look different than success in year two. And I'm not just talking like wins and losses, but just what you want to, establish and accomplish with this group and with MNUFC too. When you reflect on 2022, what does that process look like for you? When do you kind of sit down and start to focus on 2023, and how much of a break did you give yourself?
Yeah, well, the good thing is, with a whole new league starting, us starting a team, for the first time as well, a whole new staff, it was all, every week something new was coming together, and so we got to the end of the season and we finally, had things rolling a little bit. We knew how we worked with the academy. We knew how we worked with the first team. We had all our staff in place. We had all our players signed. But I mean, we went into the first game of last season and we were probably signing 5 or 6 players the week leading up to the first game, and we're really just trying to turn around these contracts to make sure we've got enough registered players to play in the first game. We went through a preseason with almost, no staff. I mean, it was myself, an equipment manager and an athletic trainer, and then we gradually added the rest of the staff. And so I think we've been able, when, the season finished, to just catch our breath a little bit, have a look and evaluate what went well and what didn't, assess, obviously the roster and those decisions moving forward. And I think everyone's come in with a better understanding. As a staff, we understand each other more. The returning players understand the expectations on them and the challenges of being with the first team maybe on one day and being with us on another. The academy players understand the opportunity that's ahead of them as well. So I think there's just more knowledge about the situation, and the team's in a much stronger position, especially comparing it from now to this time last year.
So you didn't answer the question, how much break did you give yourself? I mean, the off season, some people felt like the off season is long. Some people feel like it's too short. We had the World Cup thrown in the mix this time. Plus, the holidays are always thrown in there too. So how much time, break did you give yourself to sort of just take a breath, not even from a soccer perspective, from a life perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I got some time, but things never stop. I was able to go back to New Zealand for a couple of weeks and see my family. And it was the first time that I've been back in, gosh, maybe 5 years, and with COVID and whatnot, first time I'd seen my mom in maybe 3 years. So it was great to get back there, and we're fortunate with the weather and, long flight with 3 young kids, but it was great. So we got to take some time then, and then came back, and then, right back into it. It's the MLS Combine, and fortunately just stayed here over the winter break, over Christmas, and got to spend time with the family and the kids. And yeah, it was good.
Nice. Yeah, that is crazy when you just think about that timeline. And what are the ages of your kids?
8, 5, and 3.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about that. If you haven't been back home in that amount of time, I mean, FaceTime is lovely, but, there's only so much you can do on FaceTime. So how awesome is that just for your kids and for your family back home? So when you come back and you're like diving into 2023, you said you've got the combine, you've got open trials. There's all these things, these mechanisms that you're trying to get kind of wielded into one spot. How much communication then is there between the first team, between the academy, what you're trying to accomplish, what players you're looking at, And then even now, I mean, with the academy, you guys have added some older age groups that are going to be coming into the mix, which I would think could be help for what, for what you're trying to do with the twos.
Yeah, I mean, the communication is constant, and it has to be. We're fortunate with, our setup in the offices that we all share common space. And so a lot of that stuff happens organically. We have everyone in the same building. We have the academy staff all in the same building. With Amos now helping out with the youth development side, we have a long history that goes back and a really good relationship. Adi, who's come in as a U19s coach, we go back, to our time together in Portland. He helped out with our second team too last summer as an assistant coach. So, there's good relationships that are there, and obviously the existing academy staff that we're working with last year. So it's the communication is constant. And we're fortunate, I think, that we have a lot of eyes on our team, from the first team, from the academy. If you go out to training this morning and the first team staff are all out there watching us train, technical director, general manager, they're all out watching us train. Academy staff are out watching the training. So I think there's a lot there where we do have that vertical integration, and the fact that we share so many common spaces here in the facility really helps.
We talk about this a lot, even with much younger age groups, but how important is it in your mind to have that whole concept of, if you see it, you can be it, for some of these young players that are coming through, when they do share those spaces, not even just have an opportunity to train, but share the spaces. I remember seeing the footage last year of when they did that all team photo up in the bleachers, and some of the kids were mic'd up, and just like them lighting up when they saw some of these first team players and to be in and around them. So how much do you think about that in your role?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible. We're hopefully the ones that get to bridge the gap, from those kids coming through the academy system into a first team environment. And so it's a really important stage in their development. And we're really fortunate that we get to be a part of it. But yeah, it's incredible, because even, you take Carlos Leatherman, who last year, through some injuries and availability things that then trickle down from first team to second team, he gets an opportunity to play when he probably was not expecting to, and then gets in a run of games where he ends up playing, 17, 18 games probably over the course of a season. And now he's spent an entire, preseason in with the first team. And if you ask him, if he thought any of that would have happened this time last year, it would be really hard to imagine it, because none of the infrastructure was in place for it to happen or to support that kind of development.
When you look at what it is that you enjoy most about this age group, what is it? What is it that drives you with this age group, or some of the developmental aspects, the younger, I shouldn't say younger, they're still usually teenagers and on, but what do you like about this stage, sort of the pre-pro, even though they sign these different wonky contracts with MLS next, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I just think there's so much that we can help them with, in terms of their professionalism, their daily habits, understanding how big of a jump it is to the next level, and hopefully keeping them grounded and driven, and with a clear idea of what that pathway is, because the understanding that they're getting close, but there's still so much to do and it's so far away. And I think we can, myself and the staff that we get to lend on, borrow from our own experiences and then share those with the players. I've been on an MLS contract and didn't play with an MLS team. I then went to USL to try and get games. We have Jeremy Hall, who went through the process of being traded as a player, going from MLS to USL. And so I think the experiences that we've lived can help these players understand what the landscape is out there. And so much has changed in terms of the growth of soccer and the leagues, MLS, USL, and now MLS Next Pro, of course, and the other leagues that are out there. But so much is still the same in terms of, the development's not linear. The pathway isn't the same for everyone. And how can we help each individual find what's right for them and help them get to, attain the highest standard they can?
When you look at what this league was last year, not just you guys, but as a whole in the first year of MLS Next Pro, and then into year two, some additions of some teams, it's constantly sort of evolving as this league does continue to grow in the United States. What excites you about 2023 from a league as a whole, and then also within your team with some of the roster turnover that you guys had?
I think the best thing is again, that it's going, and so once it's going, we can make improvements. I think the focus last year from a lot of the teams and especially the teams that were new to having a second team and the league itself was getting it going, and getting things in place. And now we're looking at refining some of those processes. And some of that is, whether it's the laws of the game that they're trying to introduce new things that change in our league that might be introduced into other leagues. But also, I think improving the quality for us, trying to close the gap between what it is to be with MNUFC 2 and how do you make that jump to the first team, and trying to improve the quality in our squad so that we have guys that are interesting. I think you look around MLS Next Pro and there's a number of guys that have signed first team contracts going into this season. Columbus had 3 players playing their first game of the year that played with their Next Pro team last year. So that's like the next thing for us is now we've got this thing going, we've got it up and running. We were competitive in the league last year. How do we then serve the purpose of, one, getting players into the first team and continuing to facilitate that development for our academy players? So, that's what's on the horizon for us, and that's what we keep pushing towards.
When you look at the specific roster and some of the changeover that did happen at the end of the season, because we all know that during the season, there's some up and down and back and forth, and meaning first team players playing with you guys as they're coming back from injury and trying to keep their fitness and whatnot. And then the MNUFC 2 guys getting pulled up to the first team at times. So when you look at the end of season roster and some of the additions that you guys have made, is there anyone in particular that has, really impressed you, surprised you a little bit? You all know, that all the guys you bring in, you're signing them or you're bringing them in for a reason, but was there anything that sort of stood out to you?
I would hate to start singling guys out. It's such a trap. But I think, we had some really difficult conversations at the end of the year because we had guys that played a lot of games for us that we didn't end up bringing back, and they contributed so much to our success on the field last year, so much to the culture that we had in our team off the field. And so it was really hard to let those guys go and to try and help them find a different pathway and continue somewhere else. But that's been a real challenge. Making those decisions. Sometimes you hope those decisions are really easy, but at the end of the year, they were really difficult. And for us all to sit in a room and figure out what direction we were going to go, we only have so many roster spots that are going to be available. We knew that we needed to make some changes, and so we had to make some tough calls. But when I looked to this season, and some of the newer players, even some of the returning ones, we had signed, the young center back Rodas. We had signed him but couldn't get the visa paperwork across the line. We expected him to play games towards the end of last year, and he wasn't able to. So, we've seen him a lot in training, but, it'd be exciting to see him play games. Jesse Khan played only a handful of games after being out with injury and away with his national team. So, we're almost seeing him for the first time, and he's come in with a great attitude. Even Mosquera, who played 1 or 2 games towards the end of the season, another one that we were waiting on his visa stuff for a long time that now we get to have from the start of the year. So, just to mention a few, but there's, other ones that we've signed too, new to the team. Zayden Bello, I think, will be exciting. The Australian player, Loic, coming in with his first full professional season. Britton Fisher, who we've just signed, young centre back, I think is going to be really exciting for us. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot when we look at the group to be excited about. I think we've really developed the squad, and we have a good core group of players, and we're still looking to add, 1 or 2. We still have players in on trial, but I think it'll be a fun year for us.
When you look at the integration, and you said you guys are in communication all the time, first team, academy, the beauty of being in the same facility, but you have a different group of players than what's on the first team. So how important is it to try to be on the same page from a standpoint of style of play, philosophy? You guys go into your schedule, you still want to get wins, but there's things that you're trying to accomplish to get, these guys to that next level and up to the first team. So how do you balance that in your own mind and when you're going out to even training sessions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps that we're aligned in how we think about the game, the first and the second team staff. I, got to spend that time with the first team staff when I first came here and have a really clear understanding of how they want to play and what the expectations are in training and week to week for them. And so our goal is that even if a player goes up to a training session with the first team, that there's not too much that's dissimilar. We will have different ways of doing things. We'll have different exercises we do in training, but there'll be some core things that are the same, and that we will take from the first team so that a player goes in and they know what the expectations are, that we will more often than not play in a similar way so that we can assess a player fairly and we can say, listen, does he fit this position and does he do it well with the second team? Great. How does that translate to a first team? It'd be difficult if we all of a sudden did something completely different, because I don't think you'd be able to assess the players in the same way. So we try and you know, it's never going to be the same. The players are different. We're different as people, as a staff, but we try to have as many similarities as possible so that the transition for those players, whether they're coming down from the first team, they don't say, hey, man, what's this? This is completely different. They see it as an environment where they can continue, whether it's coming back from injury, getting, you know, the minutes they need to stay sharp, that they're excited about that. And that our players going up, the same thing. We set them up for success when they go into a training session. There's enough that's going to be hard when they step up into a first team training session that we need to ease that transition as much as we can.
Saw Patrick Weah and Tanya Oluwaseyi on the roster for the opening match for Minnesota United against FC Dallas, and Tanya even getting on the pitch. So when you look at 2023, what do you think would be a successful year for MNUFC2? How do you quantify that in the position that you're in?
Well, I mean, I think success is a lot of different things. You know, I think as competitors, the athletes and the coaches ourselves, I mean, we're always driven by wins and losses as well, you know, and so I think that's also part of development, especially as when you get into this pointy end of it, you know, with sort of the last step on that development ladder, they have to know what it means, you know, to win a game, to lose a game, how you manage those final moments in a game. So you have to have some emphasis on that. Now, it's not, you know, it's not the be all and end all. It's like it is at the first team level, but they have to know. So success for us is certainly winning games that we compete for the playoffs. You know, we're disappointed last year not to make the playoffs. I think we had a good enough team, and we just let some results get away from us at different parts of the year. So we'll see if we can be competitive. I think we've put together a good team to be competitive, but then ultimately we need to continue. I would like to see more academy players being involved with us this year. You know, Carlos played the bulk of the minutes and carried that load for the academy last year. If we can get a couple more guys involved in that week to week, I think that would be really exciting for the club. And two, if at the end of the year we have some difficult decisions to make where some of our players are contending for first team contracts, I think that'd be really exciting.
Well, I don't think, at least at the time of this recording, your actual schedule has been released yet, to my knowledge. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it hasn't been finalized.
Okay.
We have a draft, but yeah, we haven't seen a final.
Well, I say cool, not like because you appreciate that. I'm sure you'd like to know, but you know, I think at the end of the day, the excitement is kind of palpable, and people focus on the first team, but I think it trickles right down to MNUFC too. And I know when I was out of training just about every single day last year, when you got to see the integration of MNUFC2 guys into the first team, and whether it's to add numbers, whether it's to, you know, see what they can do, whether there's a need or whatever it might be, I think that the excitement is palpable for year number 2 for this MNUFC2 team. So we'll be looking for the schedule. We'll keep an eye out for it, and be sure to be pumping and pushing people to watch and attend your guys' games, because I think it's going to be a great season number 2 for you guys. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. We hope so. It should be a great year for us.
Yep, should be awesome. Well, thank you, Cam. Appreciate the time. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week to Sound of the Loons. Another one here presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. Minnesota United, of course, with a week off already in week number 2, a bye week for them, but they'll be back at it with a home opener on March 11th against the New York Red Bulls. Thanks, everybody.